What's up, everybody? Grant Wise here. Welcome to the Marketing Genius Podcast. I am beyond excited today to have the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Jon Cheplak on the podcast, who, without question, is going to bring the heat for you today. And so I'm going to kind of get out of the way here for a second and let Jon introduce himself. I know that you don't need an introduction, my man, but for those living under a rock, what's the story, man? Who are you? How'd you get to where you are today?
Well, I think in its simplest terms, it's funny you ask. I was thinking about this the other day. People ask, what do you do? And I think in its simplest of terms, what I do is I build a bridge with people, partnering, walking alongside them from where they're at to where they want to be. Whether it's personal development and, health, fitness, business. I think all those things are pretty foundational in business that people forget, but business is certainly what I lead with. But I have an epic background of a bouncer in a teenage nightclub. And my mom said, at about 21 years old, why don't you work half as hard as the bouncer in the nightclub, the janitor there, and then the guy that drove under the Space Needle, the seafood warehouse, the orders. I'm old, so orders came via fax, right?
Right.
5 pounds for Safeway of Snap or 10 pounds of salmon. We packaged it, and then I loaded the truck and drove it. So I was doing about 110 hours a week in real estate, or in those 4 jobs really, because packing the truck and driving it. And started out door knocking and cold calling and expireds. And over time, I saw people failing and struggling, and I came forward, and it just didn't feel good to me to do that. And so put my hand up to offer out and help some training. And then over time evolved into leadership. My last job, I was a GM for Prudential, California, Nevada, Texas Realty, had great mentors. Everything that's shown up in my life from a result, from a skill set, from knowledge is from very generous people that have contributed to me. I've invented nothing. It's always interesting when people say they're copying me. Oh, so you invented power and light.
Right. Yeah.
But I digress. That's another conversation. And so about 17 years ago now, I started working with broker owner managers primarily, and coaching them, and then building software for recruiting. And then as you well know, and everyone listening to this evolution of teams, brokerage within a brokerage really, as I see it, came, and a lot of them really recognized that next step for them, that's my experience of it, that oh gosh, I'm not in sales anymore. I'm in leadership, and leadership requires human beings, which I've really focused my work on. And with that, today work with about 60 team leaders, broker owner managers, primarily teams around the world, supporting them with the growth of their businesses. Then I do some stuff with, as we talked earlier, a small group of entrepreneurs outside the industry, which is actually really, really good. I think I know you're pretty diverse too, and it's so nice to get outside of our small little industry and get the brilliance of other people, because it's not an industry, it's life, it's this world, and they're all universal. So here I am today, and I think the number one thing that I want to do here, which is real congruent with what I strive to do, although we're all a for-profit business, I just want to contribute. That's my thing, man.
Yeah, I know that you are no stranger to that, man. You're always giving back. I always appreciate getting to see that out of you. That's awesome. Cool. So let's dive into this. You got into the recruiting game pretty hard, training, brokers, broker owners, team leaders, those types of things. I know a lot of your clients. One of my favorites right now is Veronica Figueroa. She's a sweetheart, and she's got nothing but nice things to say about you. But how do you help people? Like when you walk into an organization, do you tear it apart first? Do you find what's working, what's not? How do you break it down here? When we break it down, I guess let's apply some of these steps. Like, how could somebody else look at their own organization right now and say, I need to fix this.
99.9% of the time, it's the leader taking the mirror. For all of us humans, including myself, it's why I have numerous coaches, and I know that you and I both have some of the same. I saw a picture with you and Frank Kern, and
yeah, ran into Frank.
We've got some of the same legends that we reach up to. But the number one thing and that I chose to do, because it's what my mentor taught me, is I ask leaders to take the mirror, and all human beings, we struggle with this, is take the mirror that's sitting at waist level and put it at eye level. I mean, for me to move an organization, I have to first move the leader, and it's personally. Because what I learned early on is there's nothing going on privately that won't show up publicly.
Yeah.
And so leaders are, and we've heard it in theory and principle, but I know, and you know this, is I get, at a granular level, the organizations, I mean, we're looking at budgets, performance projections, we're looking at margins, we're looking at all these different things that come into the business. But what's very interesting is you can almost fail in those areas and what people would measure fail. But if you focus on your person, your health at whatever level, your fitness, some kind of activity at whatever level works for you. I know I'm kind of extreme and that's me, but if in your spirit and your relationships, and it can sound kumbaya, but I'm going to tell you something, Grant, I have numerous folks that that will tell you that's the number one thing they work on, regardless of where the organization is at. If they're doing good and want to do great, if they're struggling, the first person I go to. So there's that piece. And then I let them all know this. You're not in the real estate business. You're in the human resource, human development, human attraction, human behavior business. And the number one most critical thing that we must focus on is managing your emotions. That's it. So that's the number one place that I go to. Then we move to the numbers.
Yeah, there you go. I love that. One of my favorite quotes regarding this is that the fish rots from the head down. Like it does not matter what's going on in the organization. It usually starts at the top, and that you look around. T-Mobile was one of my favorite companies 2 years ago because you saw this CEO that was just a little eccentric, a little out there, a little crazy, but he came in and completely and totally revitalized that organization, and it was unbelievable to watch. And he did it, at the end, he kind of did it like in a very arrogant way, like, look what I did. But, through that process, he was a cool guy to watch take a company that was, I'm not going to say hurting because T-Mobile is a growing organization, but, there's that hockey stick growth that people experience. And in a lot of cases, it ties directly back to leadership 1,000%. So I think that's perfect and amazing that's where you start. And I see it in my own life. If I'm messing up here, there's a trickle down effect. There's a trickle down effect. And so I love that's where you start. But I've not particularly heard somebody state specifically the human emotion part. I've always heard people say, you got to work on yourself. But you're defining what that means, working on yourself. So what do you mean when we're trying to manage the human emotion part? Is it just feel good, positive thinking stuff, or is it a little deeper than that?
Yeah, it's deeper than that, and it's understanding where I go to, and if you talk to, because I have great respect for the large coaching companies and how they scale that. It's not my interest. Mine is to be one-on-one with my people, and that's just how it is, and it works fine for me. Is that if you talk to any of them, they know this. There's two emotions, love and fear. We hear scarcity and abundance. We hear that which we resist persists. We hear those terms, but we don't unpack it to a level where we understand it and then can see how that's really the horsepower behind us. So when I look at how we interact with maybe an employee, I look at how we interact with a recruit when we're interviewing them, when agents are interacting with the consumer, any of our interactions is, first of all, having a consciousness that where am I coming from? Am I coming from love or fear? Because love is abundance and fear is in scarcity. When someone's angry at us, because what we do is if when someone's angry or someone is coming to us, say a leader has an issue on commission splits, or I'm going to leave and these people are leaving with me, because as we know, retention is so critical. Is the first place that a human being will go to. The amygdala kicks in and fear kicks in. So now what happens is what energies generate in that situation that work against you, actually. Okay. Mm-hmm. So then we've got fear, that emotion kicks in. Then there's scarcity. Then there's resistance. And then ego, which protects us. And then we go into self-preservation. Instead of the whole, so it's this interesting path of I have to own every experience and know which energy space I'm sitting in, while at the same time approaching all of our interactions in an organization as the whole is bigger than the part. So that's where we spend a ton of our time, rooted, or I would say rooted in a foundational principle of personal responsibility. Where growth can happen for an organization is when a leader can say to me, here's the problem, here's how I created it. And that's not easy. And then on top of it, so I want to get them to understand, that's it. You're not angry at someone, you're in fear. You're not resentful of someone or something, you're in fear. Okay? When you own something and take responsibility, you're not a doormat. You're actually standing in your power. So it's really lifting people up from a space of internal motivation, in connecting with which space am I in. So really consciousness. And again, I know it sounds kumbaya, but I mean, we've got—
It's not, right? Yeah.
Because we're so— and listen, Grant Cardone, all due respect, you look at all the 10X, that's sexy, it sells. It's like the big why. Simon Sinek has sold more books than me. His keynote fees probably higher than mine. But the big why is a marketing term, and so it's getting underneath these things too. It is actually totally contradictory to how humans behave, because the number one thing for a leader to recognize is the two things that keep people from taking action is fear and overwhelm. So then a leader comes back to him, Grant, and says, well, you didn't do it because you need a bigger why. Well, wait a minute. Overwhelm stops people, so let's make a bigger why. So it's those foundational pieces, but really, kind of, it's counterintuitive to what we've been taught, I think, in most cases, and what we believe. So foundationally, when we look at managing our emotions, it's understanding what they really are, and then understanding how the people we lead mirror that.
Yeah. Oh man, I love that. Love that. And I was getting ready to ask, what do you think pushes people down this path? Because you're undoing, and maybe undoing is not the right word, but you're undoing years of belief. 100%. Years of, well, my life has always been this way. It's always been like this. I've always thought this. How do you walk into a situation like that and start pulling people back and saying, come back over here? This is where you actually need to be, because you've always been trained this. How do you do that?
By having them go there and sit in it. That which we resist persists. And so what's really holding people back, and one of the people I studied with was Debbie Ford. She wrote The Shadow Effect. Almost all of my leaders have read the book, almost all of them. So we're taught not to look in the rearview mirror. But what's very interesting, Grant, is our future's in our past. Our future is in our past. And so I take them there to have them encounter those things. And the analogy that I use is, but here's the piece. Stop judging it. Be a witness of it, not a judge of it.
Yeah.
So go there, for example, and I've been very public about this. I got sober 11 years ago. And just grinded through 20 years of my life, 9 rehabs, and yet performed, but everything else was just a wreck, shiny car, bad engine. Maybe it wasn't that shiny. I mean, we think it's shiny,
right?
That really people, they can see otherwise. But, we're taught to read affirmations and have all this positive around me. I read my first paragraph of my journal from my first day in rehab. And let me tell you how brutal it was. That first day in rehab of my 9th time in rehab, Grant, 9th time, I was in and out of the hospital 3 times in 72 hours from alcohol withdrawals. So I was so you can just imagine what that paragraph says. Mm-hmm. And so visiting what's holding people back is not a skill set. Mm-hmm. It's not a new lesson. It's the things that we resist about ourselves. So it's actually, and I'll tell people that they'll say, well, if someone says to me, well, that's personal, I'll say, I can't work with you then. What do you mean? Because it's going to show up. So actually getting people to visit that, getting them to bridge the gap and recognize how, wow, what's showing up right now today in my leadership or my productivity or in my behaviors, my relationships is rooted in that past. The solution isn't out here. It's going back and visiting that and seeing the contrast so I can grow from it. So it's staying there without judgment. That's what we do.
Yeah. And I think in doing that work, you don't create what we call like artificial change. Like, and you're talking about skill sets aren't going to solve the problem.
Really good. I like that.
It's like somebody can come in and teach you how to make more money, but that's an artificial change, right? That's just a change in slight circumstance where if you get more money, all you're really doing is accentuating an older issue. And I really, because I've lived through a lot of these experiences myself. I had an alcohol problem, and thankfully I caught it in time and backed out of it. I had a financial problem, caught it, and backed out in time. I've gone through all of these situations, and sometimes people coming around with good marketing are really just trying to create, maybe not intentionally trying to create, but creating artificial change, where you make this adjustment and life gets better, but you still have the problem that you're rooted in that you are going to come back to. It might not be now, it could be prolonged 2 or 3 years from now, but you are going to come back to it. Have you experienced that with a lot of people?
Well, yes, it's a mask.
Yeah.
It's a mask. You see it in our industry. What our industry
big time in our industry
is we're chasing this mask of how we look. And it's even outside of our industry too, because we're hardwired for approval.
Yeah.
You're hardwired for approval. So you'll watch people grow a business that's not profitable, but put on this mask of what it looks like just to gain approval. And when they can let go of that, it's an interesting dynamic.
Power. Yeah.
The analogy I use, I mean, we don't see it so much, but back in the day, and hopefully people can take this in, because it's tough. I had some conversation with someone this morning about, I know where I need to go. It's painful to go there. And I said, well, until you go there, I'm worthless. Worthless. I can strategy and tactic you, but I'm worthless. And so look at the computer. The computer starts running slow. There's something wrong. You're running slow as a human being. There's something not feeling right. And at the worst moment, the worst possible moment in your life, you don't perform. You crash. At the worst possible time, the only time the computer crashed is when you were at Word 50,000 on a Word 1,002 Word document. And so our brain is like a computer with a virus, and you've got to clean the virus. You've got to scan the computer. We don't go back and cleanse that. And so cleanse that now when it shows up. It's our duality. It's important in understanding that which we judge, that which is negative, is actually the contrast we need to recognize. Hey, without it, we wouldn't know what's good, man.
Yeah.
I got money problems. I got those. Yeah. I mean, I've been through them ones. I've been through the drinking problems. And, okay, those are the reason I'm here today. So if we can look at that, that's the piece. But I really love what you said. Artificial change. It's really good. So the mask.
Absolutely. Now, how does this all tie back into marketing, right? Because you say, let's do this first. Let's do the real work first so that we can create real change, not artificial change. How do you then take that and start going into the numbers, the marketing, the sales? Like how does one feed all of the other?
So I'll go at this top. Here's what we know, and typically, and listen, I've got some clients with some epic, we're talking 30, 40 agents in their teams and brokerages. They're closing 4 transactions, 3 transactions a month per agent. I mean, great per person productivity. But here's what we know across the board is that he or she typically with the biggest army wins. And I'll stand on it forever, because you'll hear people coach them and say, well, just get an elite group of 5 or 6 people. Oh, okay, good. Right. So let me know when that 5th or 6th person that's your top person leaves tomorrow and you don't have a recruiting trajectory. Okay. You by the way, you don't just go to the grocery store and replace your $10 million producer tomorrow. Sorry. So it is, when we take a look at it, is first recognizing that profit's in your people. I sit and I do budget performas of multi-billion-dollar companies. I do them with 3, 4, 5-person teams. And at the end of the day, when we pull everything away, there's one thing we need: more people. End of discussion. So that's the first thing. Get them to identify that, because so many people think, well, I need to spend more money here or buy this gadget or chase this or chase that, to the level, and here's where it resonated, and I'll come back around and complete this, to the level that one of my teams that's at 208 million with 34 people year to date, okay, 550 closings year to date with 34 people, okay. In October, sat down and people do the big visioning. You know what they said? We're adding nothing new. We're adding nothing new, no new tools, nothing, and declared that to the group. What we're going to do is we're going to work in mastery of ourselves and mastery of all the things that we're doing. So first, it's recognizing, until someone recognizes profits in the people, the numbers don't lie. So when we get that, then we work backwards and say, okay, so based on that, let's reverse engineer that. Are we really in the real estate business? What keeps people? Is it split? So then it's educating, saying, let's look at the empirical data. Do people come or go because of splits? No, they do not. And people can argue all they want to. Well, then how come the 35 agents that you have right now, or the 5,000, haven't left? Because they could all get a better deal. Someone will offer them a loss leader deal all day long. So now we're bridging it back, and they see this. So then it's getting them to recognize that you're in the moment creation business. And then we move into Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's human beings. What do people want besides food, water, air, shelter? People want love, recognition, belonging. So then what we work on, so we know that that's where the numbers are going to come from, okay? So we know that we've got to, in some cases, we have to re-recruit and recraft the relationship of what's there with our people, make a declaration where my leaders say, you know what, I haven't been a good leader. I've been failing as a leader. And watch them just enroll, because top down doesn't work. I'm sorry. That doesn't inspire people. So it's that vulnerability. So we've got this recognition. That's where the money is. We come to understand we're in the human resource, human experience business. Then we come to understand what's really important. People will try and fit in before they'll perform. They will sacrifice income. They will sacrifice performance just to get approval. Okay. So then understanding, then how do we put it into action? How do I run my sales meeting? The single most important thing that I do, because it's the one time a week, if I do it once a week, where I stand up and demonstrate my vision, where I stand up and I facilitate an environment where people feel the community and they sense the value, where they're like obsessed. My leaders obsessed with that 1 hour a week of the sales meeting. And then we take a look at, and then we start looking into, what is the crafting of it? We've heard less is more, and it's another one of those cliches. Well, we unpack that and say this: we're typically overtraining our people. We've got them in overwhelm.
Yeah.
So it's then getting the leaders to pull back on all the things they do. And then the public acknowledgement, and then the final piece is this: how we lead, and that's a general term. It's how we hold people accountable, and is like literally these organizations that I'm talking to you about that'll do 1,000 transactions, with super high per person productivity. They're doing one team meeting a week, one formal training a week, okay? And they do one accountability group meeting, accountability done the right way. 0 huddles. Mm-hmm. 0 huddles. So what they're doing is now we look at every interaction that we have with people, and this will dovetail into marketing. And this, you're a brilliant marketer, and we've had the same teachers.
Yeah.
Everyone, you're a marketer as a leader. You're a marketer as you're going B2C, because all we're doing is we're enrolling people. Well, to enroll people, you've got to meet them where they're at. Mm-hmm. Meeting them where they're at, while aligning them to a community that feels good. So it's A, declaring where you need to grow and are committed to growing. B, declaring what that's going to feel like to them. that we're going to love and support you and have you belong, but we expect you to contribute, not just in sales, but in volunteering. Also with that, we're going to have a context of mutual accountability. There's going to be tension in the relationship, letting people know that we are flawed up front instead of join us, it's great. And when it gets great, it gets better. So what are you going to do when something great doesn't happen? You're going to backpedal. So it's really working at a foundational level back to that leader. We've identified where the money is really in the people. And then working at this foundational human experience space, and then taking it and dovetailing it into and filtering into how I run a sales meeting, how I run my training, how I run my accountability. So then we've got the internal part of it. So, and that's just real quick in the short time we have, that's not running a brokerage or running a company. So then how do we extend the message out to the consumer in the, let's say to the recruits, to wanting to grow our business? Humanization, humanize ourselves. I'm real fortunate, as you are too, to work with people that are recognized in their franchises as number one in the world. Got a number of those folks that have been there as a branch manager, as a team, top US broker. And I say that, listen, they were great before me and they'll be great after me. Hopefully I'm with them for the long term. I have been. But in looking at now, recognizing to pull people in is understanding that our blind spot as a leader, is believing, and as a marketer to the consumer, as a marketer to, because you're marketing to your potential recruits, is that most people are consumed, tilted on the side of fear than they are on the side of love. And so what we think as a leader would be impressive or inspirational, it is only to about 1% of the population of who you're trying
Absolutely.
So in the recruiting process isn't how great we are. Sure, you're going to weave that messaging in, but it's all the stuff we know. It's humanizing my leaders to the marketplace, because we've done it internally. But you can't do it externally until you've done it internally, because then again, I'm going to steal your term and I'll always give you attribution. Artificial change. Yeah. And so now how do I extend this? Because here's the thing. People don't believe what they're told. They believe what they experience. Most companies are a black box. And I ask leaders this: how many times has someone joined you and said, if I would have known how good it was going to be? All the time. Awesome. And the reason it took so long is because you were feature dumping on them. You were jumping in the barrel of monkeys of, well, our split's this, our fees this, our stock's this, our shares this. And you'll get 6 postcards on a crescent moon and a full tide. And I mean, I don't know if you do. I'm an old guy, so I still talk postcards, just listen.
I still see it.
Right. So Grant, it's taking that out. And although, you go into Minneapolis and you land in Minneapolis, you're going to know who the top agent is in about 5 minutes. Driving down the highway with the billboards. I mean, there's Lindahl, right? And what Chris does so well and why he grows is the constant humanization, and it's genuine. I know him personally. I've spent time with him personally, so that's the difference. That's where we start, and then that's where we, looking out here at vision. This is where the result is. Now, here's the work that we do, and then having our message be a demonstration. We've sat in these rooms being a demonstration, but it was interesting. I was doing it before, when I was an operator and I had to open 15 startup offices. I think we did some acquisition startup offices. What we did back in 2000, we did power listing presentation. We got 200 agents in the room. We didn't try and convert them at the end of the thing. They got to have an experience of what it's going to be like when they join, before they join. So that's the external marketing process in the recruiting game, because the good news is, and I say this, I don't know, I'm still a bouncer in a teen nightclub and the janitor. But what I say, Grant, is this is and it's true, is I hung around long enough and I listened long enough and I asked enough questions. So I surveyed 1,000 broker owner managers, team leaders 10 years ago. And again, in the last couple of years, and I said, how many contacts on average does it take before an experienced agent makes a move? Someone with a license, 14. Awesome. So tell me this, how many times have you interviewed someone and thought it was a great interview and they leave the interview and they ghost you? Always, they're so lame. No, you're lame because you fought human nature.
Yeah, you fought the experience, the reality.
It's 14 contacts. You went to conversion language when they weren't in consideration. They're indifferent. So there's two types of ways, this little marketing, only 5% of our audience in any type of business or product or service or experience we're selling, only 5% are in conversion, in consideration. So your one size fits all, we're so amazing, is pushing 95% of your audience away.
Yep.
But people still default to that. So, and it's the same, with the consumer. So it's humanization. It's making what I liken it to with recruiting and just overall enrollment, because we're all in the enrollment process, recruiting or going out to the consumer. The reason we get no, the reason that we get stalls or objections is we're going to an ATM machine and we've made no deposits in the bank account. We can't understand why it's not giving me money. We've got to make massive deposits in the business relationship equity account. And actually, you might find this interesting, or maybe it's what you're doing too. Anthony Lamacchia is a great example. He had 91 agents in an independent brokerage on January 1 of 2018. And they do a two-step interview. So like when someone's good and everyone agrees, they still have to come back again. So it's easy to throw big numbers out, Grant. It's easy to say,
right.
Through thousands, okay, mud on the wall. No. And following this, watch this and check it out. Crush It in Real Estate, his business page. This little tiny brokerage of 91 agents, he's up there competing at a level, not competing, but at a level of some of the largest real estate groups. He's got 18,000 real estate agents that are fans or liking this environment, Crush It in Real Estate, that has 100 videos. And ready, here's the kicker. 100 videos, value-based, training, coaching, tips. Guess how many calls to action are on those videos?
One or none. Yeah. They don't need to be. I was on the phone with you one time and we were talking about something, and I think it got around to pitching a product or something like that, and you're like, you don't need to. It doesn't matter. And I was talking to somebody about this today because that's a lesson that I gleaned from you about a year and a half ago, and it's always rang true. I sat back and looked. It's like, you don't need to pitch. If you're valuable enough, you give enough, people will come, and they will come in droves. And if you're listening to this, guys, I think it's something that's so important, especially when we sit in an industry. We have such a large majority of the industry that's all about take and need and necessity. I got to have it. I need a commission check. I got it this. I got it that. I got it this. Look, I have all the same wants and needs, I would imagine. But the difference, and I believe what John's saying, the difference here is when I wake up and say, I want to build a $500,000 home for my dream home for my family. It's not, okay, what can I take from my audience to do it? It's how much can I give? What type of value must I provide? Who do I need to become in order to receive that? And if you will take that and heed that lesson, man, there's power. Like there's immense power in not looking at what do I got to take to get this and changing it and say, what do I got to give to get this? Because it flips your mindset.
I sat with Ryan Dice, who anyone, if you're not living under a rock, is one of the legendary online marketers, and I'm in War Room Mastermind.
I always like to say he's like the godfather of internet marketing, but he's still so young. He's like the grandson of internet marketing.
You get? I said with him, Perry Belcher, and those guys, but we were in a Facebook ads mastermind with about 15 people, and he came in for about 3 hours, and he said this about 2 years ago. He says, they used to say it doesn't hurt to ask. He says, today it hurts to ask at the wrong time. Big time.
That's true. That's so true.
Stay in contribution. Am I saying there's not a time? No, I'm not saying that. But like you said, if you wake up from a space of how can I contribute, it's pretty amazing what happens, because everyone's waiting for the break at the seminar for you to pitch them. They're waiting for the break. We'll be doing our 8th mastermind that we do. When I started doing them, I just wasn't keen on them, but it's evolved really well. We've not had a sponsor pay once. and put their brand up there. We have not pitched once, and I'm at capacity in all of my coaching in my business, and a lot of them come from, they get to sit there. See, because here's what I want everyone to remember is this, is when you start, here's your number one objection you've got to overcome that people are missing. Sales skepticism, period. So in my rooms, there's none. So they're going to process the experience at a higher level. And so if you have high level sales skepticism in your environment or you've created with your audience, it's okay. Now your next initiative in recruiting or in going to the consumer, any interactions is now your objective is this: how do I lower their guard? Mm-hmm. Wake up every day, and what you're talking about where you wake up and say, okay, transactionally, yeah, I've got to make money to get this outcome for my family. And I hope that everyone has that. But really the number one thing is, okay, so what I've got to do is I've got to lower people's guard and build, and they'll choose me.
Absolutely. I want to go back to one thing that you said a minute ago, and we'll wrap this up here. And guys, I want to preface this by saying this is why I believe that you need a coach. I mean, in a large degree, not this just one specific point. I think you need a coach for many, many reasons, but I want you to hear how Jon answers this question. And then I want you to follow him, and if he will let you, hire him or attend his event or do something, because I think this one point is going to help you kind of break through understanding. So now I'm like building up this big, huge, hopefully you got a rock solid answer here. There's there's like, no preloading here. Sorry.
Let's have an internet interruption here, man.
Time out. Hold on. Yeah. So maybe I built too much into it, but what I know about most real estate agents is they're living so perceptively that they're making so many decisions based on what other people think. And some of them are even taught that, the fake it till you make it's to do this, is to do that. And we have a lot of people listening to this that maybe have teams right now, 3 people or 12 people or 15 people. I get on the phone with brokers all the time. Like, I just need to fire all my staff. And what I found is that in most cases, it's because of where we rooted this podcast in. It's because they haven't done the work still here. They haven't done the work. And so what we're talking about is creating such a counterculture to what has existed for so long in their life and in their business. And they now have a team built up around them, made up of all the things that they don't really want anymore and that they don't want to be around anymore. And you said something in a while ago. It said we have to go through the re-recruiting, the rehiring, the restaffing. So to somebody that's listening to this podcast right now, it's like, man, I want it so bad. I'm afraid of what it's going to do. I'm afraid of when I have to rebuild. I'm afraid I'm going to have to restaff. Building culture, I'm afraid I have to reestablish a culture, and that's hard work. What would you say? How would you tell them to, okay, look, let's reground this here. You're really just afraid. What we went back to, it's really just fear. And how do we move past that? We go live in it for a while. But I'm getting on a tangent here. To somebody that has built this life around them that is countercultural to what it is that we know that they need to build, what we've talked about, how do I do that work to start moving in the right direction?
Sure, really good. The first thing is that I want you to just hold these things. I mean, I have certain things that I've taught by a personal coach, for a spiritual coach, and business coaches, and that I hold close to me is the first thing you need to know: this: things are never as they seem. When you're looking at folks and where they're at, they're never as they seem. They're not as good as it seems. They've got their stuff. Number 2, and it's easy to stop doing this, but capture this. Stop worrying about what other people think, because you know what they're thinking about? They're thinking about what you think about them.
Right. Yes. So there's this loop.
Now let me give you an example, and I'm not speaking out of school. I always respect the confidentiality of my clients, but this has been shared publicly numerous times, and he's the most humble guy on the planet, but he knows it's his responsibility to share it with people. Let me talk to you about a result of what will happen if you do it. A client that had an 80% turnover of their agent population. 80%, and they had 20 at the time. And to the point where it was unwinding, and to the point where when they'd sit in, I said, you've got to recruit. They would go back and they would realign. See, there's nothing more freeing than when you own it. There's nothing more freeing when you own it. So what I want you to look at is what's not working. There's something there. You're either stuck or you're not where you want to be. And it's always just one tiny hinge that'll swing the big door. And it's typically you just, for lack of better words, exposing yourself. And what I mean by exposing yourself is being open to own it and acknowledge it. But let me come back to the result that's happened. This person was losing 80% of their people, and they'd start interviewing and say, how do we recruit people? And everyone says, why would I join when everyone's leaving you? And so watch this, you guys. Listen to this great script. Okay, you ready? I understand, and that's valid. And what I've learned is a lot of areas where I can be a better leader, and I'm excited about the leader that I'm trying to become. And we're looking for people that want to be a part of that. And here's what's happened. That person went, and you know, when you start getting up in the top 20s in a nation, you don't move a slot or two overnight. That person went from number 9 to number 1 in the country in a marketplace that had 100,000 people laid off.
Wow.
So there's the result that happens. How do you, so that's easy in theory. How do you, and what is it? Is that another principle, that which you resist persists. Mm-hmm. It's a meme, but let me take you underneath it. What it means is by not going to it and encountering it, what is happening is not only going to continue to happen, but at some point in time, it's going to implode or unwind. Mm-hmm. What's the simplest way to do it? And it's simple, not easy, is to write down all the areas that you call failure, that you call falling short, and no longer judge it. And look at it as, write them down. You know what they are, everyone. Mm-hmm. Write down the areas. You know something? I'm too tough on my staff. I don't acknowledge my people enough. I expect too much out of my people. I'm not doing what I expect my people. Write down all those painful things, because it is painful. I mean, it is painful to look at yourself. And then right underneath it, I'm a witness, not a judge. And then go back to, this is where the real work is. How do you do it? Okay. Yeah. Then you go to your people and you stand in front of them and you say this, you know what? I'm not doing a good job as a leader, and I want to own that.
Yeah.
And watch the energy change now, because every human being has some things there. See, here's what's happening in the relationship with leader and agent where you're stuck, is you're projecting out the things that you know that you need to do better. Mm-hmm. And so they're resisting back because they have theirs. There's not a safety. And there's actually safety. We've heard humility, vulnerability, transparency. What's it create? It creates safety, which creates love, which creates this abundance. And so what I would say is sit down with maybe someone, an employee you've got a relationship with that's not working, and say, you know what? I haven't done a good job as a leader. Mm-hmm. I want to recommit to it. Stand in front of your people. The training has been failing miserably, and it's not the trainer's fault. It's my fault because I'm the leader. And watch people rally around you. I'd say that those are the steps. The tough part is walking through the doorway.
Yeah.
But I can tell you firsthand, you know, I just give you that one example, numerous examples of this, and they've been the breakthroughs. They've been the breakthroughs. And we're talking about people, you know, that get a ton of Zillow leads and people that get no Zillow leads.
Right. I was just about to say, yeah.
It doesn't matter.
There's all types of skill sets there. But if you, like, I can teach you guys how to be great marketers and great salespeople and how to build a massive brand and all that stuff. But if you don't do the work that Jon's talking about right here, it's artificial change. It goes back to that word. It's not going to change. You're just masking an emotion that will come back in 2 or 3 or 4 years. And it could be a decade, but at some point it's going to resurface and you're going to have to deal with that. You know, I'm a pretty spiritual guy, and the Bible teaches us that we should be a light. And something that you just kept saying is, you know, we project out what it is that we're fearful of, or we feel like we have a problem of, so on and so forth. And when we see that, you know, the word teaches us to be a light, it doesn't teach us to take our light and shine it on somebody else. It teaches you to be. And I think there's so much power in what Jon is telling you right here. If you can be that person that you are supposed to be, if you can be the light in a dark world, it's just magic. I mean, it's so pure. It's so just euphoric. There's not a word to describe what happens in your life when you implement some of the changes that Jon's talking about. And so my hope and prayer after listening, this is one of the best podcast episodes we've ever done, is that you will take this seriously, and you will reach out, and you will, at the very least, follow Jon Cheplak, and you will learn how to become a better human being, and in turn will do the work necessary to take you to the next level. Jon, thank you so much for being here today, bro. I appreciate it.
So good, man.
Love it. You guys, if you want to follow Jon, make sure, what's the best place? Is it Facebook? Is that primarily where you're at?
Yeah, you know.
Yeah. Follow Jon. We'll link
Jon
him
Cheplak on my personal Facebook page. That's where I'm at, man.
Yeah, he stays in one lane, and he's always there. So go to, we'll make sure that we link his profile, but look up Jon Cheplak if you want. And it's Jon, it's not John, Cheplak. Look him up, connect with him. We'll link his profile in the show notes. Thank you guys for listening so well. We appreciate you tuning into the Marketing Genius podcast. Keep listening to us on the website, rate us on iTunes and Google Play. We will see you guys on the next episode. Peace.